JFK is in this motorcade in downtown Dallas, just a few miles from here. And they are coming toward the supposed shooter, Lee Harvey Oswald's position, right? So it's driving down the street, and then the street curves around and kind of does a U-turn. And supposedly Lee Harvey Oswald doesn't shoot him as he's approaching.
Right.
He waits till the car turns around and is headed the other way to shoot them. And the theory on that is because that was the triangulated location where the other sniper teams were apparently waiting for him. And that's why none of this makes sense, because the single shooter couldn't have done what they say he did, right? Maybe we start with the what shot killed JFK? How many shots were there? And how many witnesses said they heard, multiple shots?
Well, look, ear witnesses in a shooting are difficult, so I'll go with even the Warren Commission apologists on that one, where you can say that witnesses could have heard a variety of things.
Could have been echoes.
Based on that, based on their lack of experience. Although guys like Charles Brehm, who had been in combat, knew exactly what a bullet sounded like.
And he was one of the witnesses?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And not the guy who, by the way, is the only positive identification of Lee Harvey Oswald in the window, who's standing across the street looking up 6 floors without his glasses on and can describe his height, weight, eye color. I'm
really?
It's
Wow.
a little difficult.
Wow.
That's
amazing.
He got a good look.
Yeah.
There was no glare.
Interestingly, I just rewatched JFK yesterday for this, and one of the things that they show is that after the shooting, Lee Harvey Oswald escapes down the street and he goes into a movie theater. And that's the whole thing, that Lincoln was shot in the movie theater, went to a warehouse. Kennedy was shot from the warehouse, went to the movie theater. Anyway, like 30 police officers show up. They don't know yet that it's Lee Harvey Oswald, that he's the one who is being sought for the assassination. But for some reason, there was quite a police presence interested in apprehending him at that particular time. Was there not?
Well, yeah, going after a cop killer is always the explanation, because he allegedly kills Tippit before that.
And that's that's why they supposedly focused on him so hard.
Yeah. But that doesn't explain to me why it is that photojournalists are also present, and there's a huge crowd outside of the police that show up for a guy who allegedly didn't pay for a ticket. That was really the thing. He goes into the movie theater. I'm not kidding here, by the way. A shoe salesman sees him, lurking around on the street, named Johnny Brewer, says, "Oh, that looks odd." He goes into a movie theater, doesn't pay for the ticket, and walks in, and was hardly noticed. And then the guy who's selling popcorn says, "Maybe we should call the cops." And photojournalists, 30 police, multiple cars, a crowd gathers within moments of this happening. Now, that's pretty wild for a time when we don't have social media, flash mobs, or, the internet, nothing.
Right.
Pretty interesting for 1963, I would say. At a movie theater, which, by the way, still shows shows parts of the films and stops them when the film got stopped, when the cops come in to go arrest them, and all of that good stuff.
Oh, wow.
Where, by the way, he allegedly had picked up his revolver, because his escape from the school book depository is even stranger than this. Well, he went to a movie theater. You're leaving some things out. He leaves, gets on a bus, gets a transfer, tries to go through. The bus gets caught in traffic. He jumps off the bus, catches a taxi to go to his rooming house, where he picks up a revolver, and a jacket, and then makes a mad dash for the movie theater, which, by the way, is a little difficult logistically to get him there. But anyway, he supposedly makes it there. Oh, and in between getting there, he shoots and kills a cop. Supposedly, right? Who approached him on the street and maybe was trying to catch him on a vague description that went out on the radio. Hey, look, white guy with short hair, maybe was involved in the killing of the president. Be on the lookout. I wonder how many of those there were in Dallas that day.
Just the one. There was just the one.
Just one.
Yeah, we looked into that. There was just one guy.
He stuck out. Anyway, really interesting, the intuition of the Dallas police force.
Yeah. Too bad they're not that intuitive today, because there's a lot of crimes that are going unsolved in this town. But anyway, go ahead.
You're talking about the stuff that goes on where people end up in bodies of water. Anyway, look, leave it alone. Not today's issue. The thing is, it's amazing what goes on here. And there are people that were tied to, believe it or not, military intelligence, who are auxiliary officers and all of that kind of stuff, who also had day jobs with the cops. And, a guy named Jack Ruby was hanging around in the police station, by the way, all weekend, while Oswald's being hauled in and out of hallways that are packed, mobbed with reporters and cameras and bulky things, everybody screaming at him. And you can see footage of this now, because that's the day, by the way, network news went like live and wide for 24 hours a day, where they did not stop broadcasting the news, the moment-to-moment developments in the assassination from that Friday afternoon, when Walter Cronkite's waiting for a camera to warm up, which is why you see CBS breaking news. They're waiting for the camera to warm up so they can put him on, and he makes that first announcement, with that logo up there. And NBC forgot to even put in a videotape, for the first, 15 minutes of the broadcast on the assassination that day. So that's why there, as it happened, is missing the first 15 minutes. Interesting how the news went live and all of the conflicting reports that occurred there. Some fascinating information is developed moment to moment. A lot of falsehoods are found out. Oh, by the way, when I brought up that thing that he did in New Orleans where he was handing out the Fair Play for Cuba committee literature? Well, it just so happens that WDSU-TV and some guy who also happened to be CIA funded was out there, patriotism as an anti-communist, had to interview him for some obscure radio show. That stuff traveled around the country and was being used in the news coverage almost immediately. Again, amazing for an age when we don't have the ability to share content on YouTube and whatnot, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just saying.
Am I right, Chuck, in believing that the kill shot came from the front?
Okay. Depends on who you talk to. I would agree with you. And a forensic, examiner named Sherry Feaster, who wrote a book called Enemy of the Truth.
And by the way, that's important because Oswald was behind him.
He waited for the car to go around the bend.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey,
all right, go ahead.
You only stole part of my punchline. But the thing is, always and all along, 2 shots landed because, by the way, the third shot, which caused them to have to invent the magic bullet, wounds a guy named James Tegg, who's standing under a railroad bridge, and they had to account for that shot as well when they only stated that there were 3 shots, considering there were only 3 shells found allegedly on the 6th floor of the school book depository building. But pay no attention to the witnesses that saw other things strike things like the grass on the other side of the street, or the manhole cover, or et cetera, et cetera. And by the way, if you walk into Dealey Plaza, somebody will come by and tell you about it. All you got to do is wait there for about 5 minutes, and someone will show up to do it. They'll tell you about the other bullets. They'll tell you about the other shooters. They'll tell you about the acoustic evidence. Oh, by the way, that's something else that was developed in the 1970s off of the Dictabelt recording of the police broadcasts from that day, which has now been disputed by different experts, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But again, I would look for a guy named Dr. Thomas to see how he explains the order and the data there. But over and over again, we've had investigations. And here's the fascinating part about this overall, to put it in a real serious nutshell, if you think about it. In any murder case, in any murder mystery case, you ever notice if you watch it and it's small town Iowa, it's this weird spot in Jersey, it's in California, wherever it is, you ever notice that over time, the evidence narrows itself down. You eliminate suspects.
Yeah.
You eliminate possibilities. Even mistakes that are made in investigations, forensic examinations, DNA evidence, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Over time, with the evolution of technology, the evidence pool whittles down. It narrows as far as your pool of suspects. You get to a conclusion eventually, in some cases where, okay, finally we've got it. We might not be able to bring it to court, but we basically got the idea of what happened here 20 years later, 30 years later.
Yeah, all the other stuff surrounding it goes away.
Yeah, fascinating how in this case it works in reverse.
Yeah, the opposite.
Despite the fact that it's had the largest team of independent researchers, investigators ever in history, probably examining the shortest time period. What we're talking about is, if it's the Zapruder film, it's 26 seconds. If it's the shooting, it's maybe 6 seconds if you look at Josiah Thompson, but I would argue it's 9 seconds. Let's be nice and call it 10 seconds in Dallas. that has inspired all of this ever after.
Yeah.
Thousands of books now,
Yeah.
hundreds of films. You mentioned JFK. By the way, if you're going to watch that, it's a little outdated, but it did spawn the Assassination Records Review Board, which got us about 5 million more documents into the National Archives to look at, and got us some interesting gems like Operation Northwoods, like where the concept of conspiracy theory and why it is you label people who are Warren Commission critics conspiracy theorists, sent as a memo from the CIA. You can see that because people have been working on this all this time. But you don't have a narrow pool of suspects. You don't have a presentable and historical record here that has made itself clear over time, even with the French perspective of 75 years of perspective. You don't have it, even at 60 years, 61 years. But we're going to keep going no matter what, those of us that are still dedicated to it, and even suing the Biden administration right now.
Yeah.
The Mary Farrell Foundation is doing that. Why? Oh, by the way, here's a one side or the other, it doesn't really matter argument, just for you real quick. 2017, after 25 years of waiting from the Assassination Records Review Board, concluding its business, Donald Trump is supposed to dump all the documents. He doesn't. Biden doesn't either.